Hi. So, this particular broadcast is in reference to my dead ex-husband's sister's youngest son, only son, to be honest. So, his name was Joseph Anthony Lopez. My son wound up getting a message at some point letting me know that apparently Joseph had been shot during a drive-by. Now, I don't know if that actually is truthful or occurred. Quite frankly, as mean as this might come across, I don't really feel bad. Mainly because of the fact that he treated my children the way he had. And while I understand that, what is the saying, children will be children or something like that, that Principal Don Rank had stated, his mother, Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez, at that time refused to discipline him. Now, his mother also was warned, you should get a tubal ligation. She had said that she was going to get involved in the equivalent of the swinging lifestyle, and I said, well, either use condoms or use specifically spermicidal condoms, but it's a personal preference for an extra measure of safety. But she told me that she was going to do what she was going to do, and I was like, yeah, but there's STDs, and you should really take those into consideration. There's the fact that you can get knocked up, and, apparently she didn't listen. Anyway, Joseph Anthony Lopez, when I met him the first time in 2000, after meeting and being introduced to that side of my now dead ex-husband's family, which, as a quick little side note, I at least gave my now dead ex-husband a warning of my biological family in certain regards, so that way he could kind of have something to go off of for certain things. I got no warning at all about anybody, at all. So when I met my ex-sister-in-law, Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez, I was not warned that she was competitive for her parents' attention in ways that made no logical sense. I was not warned that the eldest daughter, Brianna Marie Lopez, had this bratty type of attitude at the time, which later she mellowed out and we had a lot of conversations and discussions. But I also was not warned that Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez treated her children the way she did. I understand that Brianna, as Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez said, was a problem child. Realistically, she just wanted positive attention, and the only way she could get any attention was to piss off her mother, and then she was beaten relentlessly. And then as far as Marissa Marie Lopez, the middle child, she had to stay. Those in the LGBTQP community very much understand that she could not fully be herself and be accepted in that side of the family. Whereas, as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, it's going to be difficult, but that's okay. You're going to find your way. It's going to be okay. Over time. And then as far as no warning whatsoever that Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez had her children the eldest raising, meaning Brianna and Marissa, raising Joseph, the youngest, Joseph Anthony Lopez. And while I don't believe in speaking ill of the dead in certain ways, I also don't deny that there are instances where certain individuals just are the memory of who they were. That's it. So I had no warning that Joseph Anthony Lopez was as spoiled as he was. And it was explained repeatedly, he's carrying on the family last name and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, you could at least raise him better to be like respectful. So Joseph Anthony Lopez was vicious towards his older sisters, vicious towards my daughter, vicious towards my son, while they were young, all the way to the last time that my children were allowed to be anywhere near him. Hypothetically speaking, if Joseph Anthony Lopez didn't actually die because of a supposed shooting and had taken whatever reference in regards of attempting to fake a death and all that sort of stuff, and then later caused problems for my Medal of Honor art project because of his own inadequacies, as he was not a special snowflake in school. He was not a special snowflake to anybody but his mom, and realistically, even Grandma Nichols had repeatedly told Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez, put that boy in his place. Brianna and Marissa should not be raising Joseph Anthony Lopez, who was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and one of the places he lived in was White Settlement. Well, later on, many, many years later, after not speaking with them knowingly, in person at least, because of everything that was going on, and they had proven their actions in a quick little way, when my daughter was hospitalized, the only way Grandma Nichols and Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez would visit my daughter, because as Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez said, if it was my son, everybody in the family would drop everything and do anything possible to help him. But because it was my daughter, and showing that misogyny and sexism, they needed assistance to actually care about my daughter. So in order to get them to go to a single appointment, because they refused afterwards, I had to drive, and you can Google this online, from Carrollton, Texas to Fort Worth, Texas to pick up Grandma Nichols, to then drive from Fort Worth, Texas to White Settlement, Texas, because Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez wasn't ready in time and refused to be on time, despite the fact that there's only, for those who know acute care and residential care treatment facilities, there is a specific time slot, which is a good thing that I made sure to be we're leaving early because that. And so after getting to White Settlement from Fort Worth, from Carrollton, Texas, waited for Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez to finally get her 3 children and then Brianna's baby into the car to then drive back towards Denton, Texas, which Carrollton, Texas and Denton, Texas, they could have been. Anyway, then after the brief hospital visit, stay to spend time with Lidia, I had to drive them back from Denton, Texas to White Settlement, Texas, because nobody thought that it would be smart to just, I did, but they didn't. So drove to White Settlement to drop off. Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez was too tired from the drive that I was doing to take Grandma Nichols back to Fort Worth. So I had to drive back to Fort Worth to then go back to Carrollton, Texas with my son. The entire drive from White Settlement, Texas to Denton, Texas, and from Denton, Texas to White Settlement, Texas, I listened to that boy, Joseph Anthony Lopez, which at that time he was, but he was, I think, he was either in 5th or 6th grade in elementary school, maybe 4th, somewhere around there. And just annoying. And it was one of those, you are in my vehicle, because I drove the white Sedona van, I think, that time. So you are going to behave by my rules. And if you don't like my rules, I don't care. Because this is my car. I'm driving. You're going to do as I say, because I am not your mom. I'm not going to baby you because I'm not your mom. So, no, I'm not going to stop for you to get something to eat. You're going to, if your mom didn't feed you beforehand, I have snacks in the car. You can have some of those. He threw a temper tantrum because they weren't what he wanted. And then spilled the food all over the floor. And I'm like, why are you wasting food? So then afterwards, that was just one situation. So, for those who understand, that is one of the many reasons in reference to after my daughter's hospitalizations after what happened at the Fort Worth Zoo, because of the parents who didn't watch my daughter correctly during the field trip at the Fort Worth Zoo with McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. One of the many reasons where it was like, okay, I need to make sure my daughter is getting the help she needs, and I need to make sure my son knows that despite everything going on, I care about him and want to make sure that he has as balanced as possible of a life, because the situation was quite chaotic, as anybody could guess at any point in time. So when the final time I spoke with Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez, her daughters, her son, and Grandma Nichols, had been shortly after that drive, because I was absolutely infuriated. I had done all sorts of stuff before then to attempt to be the complete opposite of a stereotypical ex-wife, not forgetting a bunch of other stuff. Well, when things came to the point of CPS and having to give up my parental rights legally because of the insurance company no longer covering my daughter, among several other things, my biological family was not helpful at all. My own biological mother, 2 years prior to that point, had said, why don't you just give it up? And it was like, no, because I'm not going to give up as easy as you would. So there is the situation in reference to that, and I had, because the CPS workers, the blonde female that was about my height, dirty blonde, stocky build, broad shoulders, and then Luis had made the recommendation to reach out to my extended family after I explained what happened with my biological family, because they said I needed to do it. I sent a message to Mary Evangelina Nichols-Osteen because Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez was obviously not the individual to ask for help from, despite the fact, apparently, as I was told, she wound up with my daughter. But I had contact, but at least that's what I was told. I was aware that Joseph threw a whiny little temper tantrum because I took Marissa to the trip, or on the trip, from Texas to Georgia to Florida and then back to Texas. I did not care at all that Joseph Anthony Lopez was throwing a temper tantrum because I didn't take him. The purpose of the vacation for Marissa that I made for her was for her to be able to actually enjoy a summer, actually not have nearly as many responsibilities for once. Yes, she had to babysit my children when I went scuba diving, but those were 2 different times and that was it. Otherwise, it was to get her out of the state of Texas so that way she could see different things. Not an offense to the state of Texas, just so she could see something. Because I didn't know when she would get the chance to. And so, Joseph Anthony Lopez threw a whiny temper tantrum. And when he did that in reference to throwing one at me, I went, stop. And he tried stomping his feet, and I said, no, I am not your mom. Like, I'm not going to be a part of whatever you think you are going to do. So, no, stop it. I am not your mom. I will not, no, but you need to, like, pay attention because I'm not your mom. I'm not going to treat you like your mom at all. In reference to fast forwarding later to my Medal of Honor art project trip, which, if hypothetically that supposed online thing that was sent to my son was not real, and hypothetically if Joseph Anthony Lopez actually is alive, and he was one of the individuals in the vehicle in Montana during my Medal of Honor art project trip, the red Hyundai that had caused hours of traffic backup. In 2016 or 2017, I think it was 2017. First, obviously he was not invited. Second, I would guesstimate people in the state of Montana would have no problem stating the reality of none of them are your mom and none of them are your dad, and you not only chose to cause problems for my Medal of Honor art project, which in turn would absolutely infuriate every city, every state throughout the United States of America in reference to what the Medal of Honor is, as well as all of the Medal of Honor recipients' surviving family members, as well as all of the elected officials of each of those cities and states. Definitely not forgetting, the Congress and Senate that had voted to approve it before President of the United States of America awarded it when the Vice President was alerted of. As well as each and every branch of the United States of America's armed forces, active duty, National Guard, reservist, and veteran. Definitely not your mama and not your daddy. And so, hypothetically speaking, if that little boy had something to do, meaning Joseph Anthony Lopez, because his mom, Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez, taught him at a young age to disrespect things, and had been one of the individuals who had put something wrongly into the atheist, who is my dead ex-husband, but their spiritual husband's casket, before having it taken to a Holy Roman Catholic church that they grew up going to, for the priest to do that. Funeral rites for a known atheist. Thankfully, again, that priest did not do the funeral rites in the actual cathedral, which threw Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez and Mary Evangelina Nichols-Osteen into a little tailspin of, temper tantrums, because they had wanted it in the cathedral, and at least the priest listened to me. I mean, he didn't fully listen to me, but he listened enough, because he probably opened up the casket to see all that stuff and was like, oh my God, yeah. And that's why I was in the cafeteria instead of at the cathedral. If, hypothetically speaking, those cousins that were taught by their mothers to be disrespectful to various religions and spiritual paths, on top of all the other stuff, because it is known my dead ex-husband had stolen valor from the United States of America's Army branch of the Armed Forces. I really, truly want to wish that they wouldn't be dumb enough to do that. But then again, there was a point in time during Grandpa Nichols' funeral, after the drive afterwards, where Brianna Marie Lopez had played a voicemail message for my daughter of her biological father's voice. I would guesstimate that while maybe there might be some change for the better for some of them, if hypothetically Joseph Anthony Lopez was not among them, I would not be surprised in the slightest. And because Joseph Anthony Lopez had an affinity for video games, unlike Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez, I refused to go to GameStop and wait for hours for a release of a game. No offense to the video game makers, just, my son's education was far more important than a video game. And yes, I did do that in reference to, as an ending note, to be on a more positive-ish reference point. So my son had been told repeatedly, I said, James, you need your grade levels, not your video game levels, to raise. Like, you're like, I know you don't fully understand this, but I'm half Chinese, and though not speaking with Grandpa Han at this point in time, like, the education aspect of grades are very important, and I'm being so nice, like those who grew up with strict parenting, not just Chinese, but or Asian, and just like those who grew up with strict parents understand this aspect. So I was raised, if I got an A plus, I passed. If I got an A or an A minus, I failed. Like, it was not like, oh, I did bad. So an example I can give is, ironically, I wrote an Instagram message in reference to a TV show that I watched when I was sick in 5th grade with mono Epstein Barr bronchitis, Lyme's disease, and the flu all at the same time. After getting back to school, I had a test that I had to take. And I got like something in the 90s, but because there was extra credit, I got the extra credit right. And so I went home with the test later on, and it had to be signed by, biological parents. And my biological father looks at the test and he says, "So you got 106 or 107? And I was like, "Yep." He said, "But you could have gotten 110? And I said, "Yeah, but like I got the extra credit, so, And my biological father said, "Well, you failed." What? I tried giving that reference to my son, James, and James looked at me and he's like, "I don't understand." I'm like, "I am only asking you to maintain a B plus average and above. That is so much nicer by the way I was raised. Like, so nice. Just B plus and above. That's all I'm asking." He got down to where he had a D. And I had warned him multiple times. Bring your grades up. You don't make me like have to respond to that. Because if I have to respond to that, I promise you are not gonna like what my response is. Because I know it's the video games that are causing the problems. My son said, "Okay, I'll work on my grades." Had the ability for tutors, had all that stuff. He came home with an F. I had him pack up every single piece of that video game system. And he looks at me and he's like, "Okay, the video, like he put it in a box. Like, here, I got one right here." So, boxes it all up, and he's like, "Okay, what do I do with it now?" And I'm like, "You ate a snack before." And he's like, yeah, what about I got the thing? I said, "Yeah, okay. Get in the van," or get in the car, because I had a car at that point. And he's like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "You did get every piece, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Let's go." Drove over to GameStop on 1604 and 281. And he's in the car and he's like, "Mom, I don't like where this is going." And I said, "Well, you know what? Remember all those times over the months that I said you needed to have a better grade in school? Yeah. Remember how I was, and this is one, remember how I said, as long as you have good grades, you can have your video game system? Yeah. You remember how I said all you gotta do is have a B plus and above. No C's, no D's, and no F's. Yeah. Okay. I don't know where this is going. I don't care. I don't care. And so, get to GameStop, and I'm like, "All right, get out with the box." And he, "Why?" "Oh, remember how I said keep your grades up? Yeah. All right. So, walked into GameStop to the return section. I'm like, cash only. And the clerk behind the counter, it was a female, I think, and a male, the two of them. And the female looks at James, which is my son, and he's got tears in his eyes because he realizes, and he's like, Mom, please no. And I'm like, yeah, remember how I told you needed to have good grades? And so I was dating that male where I wound up in Washington State with at that time. And so Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. is walking around and he's just like, oh my God, this is actually happening. All right, good. And I was like, all right, let me know when you're done going through all that. Because no, not going to deal with this. And so my son started crying. And I was like, no, you are not going to cry in the store. No. Remember how I told you your grades had to be like B+ and above? Like I could settle for 1 B, not a B-, but a B. Yeah. Okay. And you got what grades? So he starts crying, and I'm just like, let's go outside. Let's go outside. You let me know what, and at the person who's going through this stuff, you let me know when I can come in and get the cash on that. Go outside. My son was crying and upset because of that, and I was like, you know that you had to have your grades at a certain grade, otherwise you were going to deal with the repercussions as I saw fit, right? Yeah. So then I in San Antonio, so it wasn't a big deal. I was like, all right, pick cherries. He goes, what? I said, pick cherries. And he goes, what's that? I said, put your arms out to the side and pick some cherries. Pick them. Keep your arms out, because an F is unacceptable. I don't care. Nope. No. So later on, while that's going on, this older female with her grandson goes in the store, and I'm telling my son, your grades, da-da-da. And I'm not drill sergeanting it. I was just, your grades are more important than da-da-da than, video games. Yes, I understand video games are fun, but I guess, but no offense to the video game company, but you need to do this, you need to do that, da-da-da-da. And this so this little grandma comes over and she goes, you shouldn't yell at your son. I go from, and what? And she just kind of, and I was like, you do not know the situation. So, you saw how I was discussing with my son about his grades not being acceptable for him to have the video game system. Do not lecture me at all, because otherwise, if you try to tell me how to raise my son while you're taking your grandson in, you don't want this to go to this. Because if this goes to this, he'll be happy. He knows he'll still deal with it. But you won't like this. And she went inside with her grandson. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. And in an Anna sort of way, meaning my biological mother, go back to your grades. And so then, my now ex-boyfriend Jesse comes outside and he goes, Susan? And I'm like, what? And he goes, hey, Grandma already told the whole store about how dare you tell her not to tell you how to raise your son when he's failing in certain classes and you returning his video game system. Like, Grandma went through the whole store. Oh, she was gonna yell at me and blah, blah, blah. Could you believe that? As her grandson started throwing a temper tantrum because he wasn't getting the video game that he wanted, and then she went to buying it for him. Irony. And so I go inside. The video game store people were like, here. Here you go. Here. And I was like, cool. You guys have a good day. And they were like, it's like, all right, yeah, have a good one. I go outside, take my son with me, go in the car. Both my now ex-boyfriend and my son are absolutely silent. James is just in the back. Every now and then I hear it. And it's like, and then there was silence. Get back to Thousand Oaks townhomes. Go inside. James is mad. It's like, yeah, well, you know, if your grades were better, you could have kept your video game system. But because your grades, I didn't ask them to be as high as when I grew up. So I'm just saying. So later on, after I made dinner and James took his shower and stuff like that, and then, you know, story time and then bed, I'm outside on the back patio and I'm smoking a real cigarette, not an e-cigarette. I'm just along with some MMG. And Jesse comes out and he's like, hey, can I tell you what happened inside the store? And I was like, what? And he's like, it was a good thing. And I was like, okay, what? He said, the video game store at GameStop, they wanted to say thank you. And I was like, oh, well, they could have said thank you. He was like, I don't think they were wanting to do that. Not after hearing what Grandma did to piss you off. Nope, they weren't going there. No, and I was like, what happened? And they were like, in reference to what he was saying, was, you are like the first mom that they have ever, or first parent, it doesn't matter, male or female, that apparently has been in the GameStop store that was actually not beating your child, but disciplining him, and then showing that, not just him, but the entire staff, that instead of, while video games understandably in some ways can assist with certain things for those unlike me who can't actually look at that stuff and play that, like actually being a mom, like grades being more important than the next video game. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I don't see why he couldn't get, you know, just like, just not the way I grew up. And I mean, I know it sounds like, well, I grew up walking uphill both ways to get to school, whatever, I don't care. But in the final closing point, while Susie Marie Nichols-Lopez was willing to do the waiting for hours and hours for a video game, I obviously was not. So, in reference to my Medal of Honor art project and the boy and the girl in the front seat of that red Hyundai with a couple of people in the back seat, when I was driving the white Dodge Grand minivan with the 666 California license plates, causing hours of traffic backup, that had to do with those cousins, whether Mary Evangelina Nichols, Osteen's daughters, and or in more specific, Joseph Anthony Lopez. I said before and I'll say it again, I'm not your mama. Don't expect that from me. You guys have a good one. Like and share my video. Subscribe to my channel. All that sort of stuff. And since, you know, doing the whole, like, lockdown quarantine thing because of the coronavirus thing, you can binge watch a whole bunch of my videos on my channel. Make sure it has the official mark, which literally has a parentheses in the word official in capital letters. Some have stars on one side or both, but I put that in the title. You guys have a good one. Brightest of blessings.